Part 166. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1656. Complaints are complaints, hard work is hard work. Even if the Lord of Thunder has a stomach full of things to vomit, even if he wants to slap Gretel on the head with a magic crystal board, even if he wants to turn around and leave, he must fulfill his duties as a teacher before that. What does a teacher do? Isn't it just about collecting resources for students? No need to do that. Little Greed has grown into a resource-gathering expert, able to distribute the benefits to his disciples, senior brothers and sisters, and even to him, the teacher. Setting up topics for students and pointing out research directions, there is no need for this. Now little Gretel has come up with a lot of topics and then respectfully holds them in front of him. Even he, the teacher, takes the topics created by the students in front of him. Research. Answering students' questions and solving their doubts, well, this must be done. If you don't do it well, the status of teachers and students will really fall apart. First of all, do you have to solve all the problems before you start helping the dragon clan have children in batches? But this is very expensive and the success rate is very low. Secondly, if you don't solve the problem of dragon eggs hatching and dragon hatchlings awakening, but start directly, will the success rate be completely lost? It's not that, but again, if you solve a batch of problems first and create a batch of children for the dragon clan, will it hinder you from solving subsequent problems? This will never happen, but wasting too many resources? Will a group of dragons be wasted in pregnancy and childbirth? Wasting time and energy. Gretel nodded vigorously. If he really messes up, if he comes up with a technology, he will help the dragon clan to do a batch of assisted reproduction, and then he will develop a batch of technologies, and he will do a batch of assisted reproduction, and now he will make a lot of money. It only cares about the union of fertilized eggs, not about conceiving, let alone giving birth, and it doesn't care about what happens after hatching. Just like in the previous life, those assisted reproductive institutions paid once for examination, once for artificial insemination, once for ovulation induction injection, once for egg retrieval, and again for in vitro fertilization and transplantation. What? The combination of sperm and eggs failed. None of the 4, 8, or 21 eggs that were retrieved developed into suitable morula, and none of them could be transplanted into the body. Can the morula transplanted into the body fail to implant? Can I get back the money I paid before? Absolutely impossible. If I couldn't get pregnant naturally before, there must be something wrong with the man, the woman, or both the man and the woman. Or the fallopian tubes are blocked, or the endocrine system is not regulated, or there is less sperm and weak sperm. In short, there is something wrong somewhere. If not, why seek medical help? Since there is a problem, then the sperm and egg cannot combine, the fertilized egg cannot divide normally, and the divided fertilized egg cannot implant in the bed. Isn't this a matter of course? Why do you think it's a medical institution's problem? If Gretel had this kind of attitude, he would be able to convince a large number of people, or indeed, a large number of dragons. However, he couldn't bear it. Pregnancy for the dragon clan is such a troublesome thing. From conception to birth, from birth to hatching, both parents, especially the mother, have to devote a lot of effort and mobilize a lot of energy. As long as he thinks that if he forces a mount with incomplete research, 3/4 of his efforts and energy will be wasted, or 7/8 will be wasted, he will not be able to be shameless and use immature methods to plunder the dragon clan. Remuneration. And this is of their own volition. Voluntarily. They even asked you for it. The Lord of Thunder hates the fact that iron cannot be transformed into steel. They all came to beg sincerely, and they even wanted to spend money to block the door. So what if you just satisfy them? It's not like you didn't make the stakes clear. Well, that's true. Medical treatment is never certain, guaranteed to cure, or guaranteed to achieve the desired effect of the patient. It's always progressing day by day, year by year, layer by layer. Just like assisted reproduction, artificial insemination first solves the problem of being unable to mate naturally. Another generation of test tubes solved the problem of sperm being unable to swim. Then there are the second generation test tubes, which solve the problem that sperm cannot break through the egg barrier. The meal must be eaten one bite at a time and the things must be done one by one. Every technological advancement can always solve some problems. Looking at it from another direction, every technological advancement will definitely bring a group of people crying to heaven and earth. This time's technology still can't solve our problems. If we can't solve this problem, then we can continue to study it. What else can we do? Then, I'll put the batch number first. Gretel hesitated. The Lord of Thunder was stunned for a moment, and then he understood what release numbers meant, and smiled. Of course. Complete a batch of work first, send a batch away, and let the dragon see that your work is still very fruitful, the Lord of Thunder replied without hesitation. Of course, you will still receive the due payment, don't be lenient. Think on the bright side, once this batch of numbers is released, you will at least finish the simple batch, right? It also makes sense, from the perspective of avoiding excessive medical treatment. If artificial insemination can be used, first-generation test tubes will not be needed. If first-generation test tubes can be used, second-generation test tubes will not be needed. On the one hand, the seeker will suffer less, on the other hand, experiencing less artificial intervention is equivalent to experiencing more natural selection. The fetus will be able to survive the pregnancy smoothly, be born successfully, and have a higher probability of being healthy, lively, and disease-free. Teacher, I'm going to assign the number first. Greet bowed respectfully and walked out. Walking to the door of the study, he suddenly braked and turned around again. Teacher, this batch of assisted reproduction has been completed and the money has been collected. What if they refuse to pay for the next stage of research? The Lord of Thunder was speechless and choked for a moment. This kid is having such a good life that he has even forgotten the basic skills of cheating on a budget. A research budget is not possible and will never be possible. As a magician who advances through research, who has not fought with the Parliament and the budget department of the Parliament all the way to the top. From a low-level mage to a high-level mage, from a young man working under a teacher to a high-level mage with an independent laboratory, to a legend with a complete team under his command. Year after year, project after project, this homework has never been put down. That is, this little guy, from the Eagle Kingdom to the Sun Kingdom, from the Elf Forest to the Dragon Island. Basically, every time, the financial resources of a kingdom are used to support one person's research, and the financial resources of a race are used to support a laboratory. Whatever materials, energy, and people they want, they just ask. They basically get whatever they ask for, and they never feel what scarcity feels like. Over time, he even forgot the ability to divide research into several stages, hand in tasks in stages, and apply for projects in stages. Have you never thought about who needs your research the most? The legendary dragon. Does your current research meet their needs? It probably won't work. The pregnancy problem of the legendary dragon is still unclear. More research on chromosomes and energy is needed. Then you're still worried that they won't pay. Well, the higher level magicians are richer, and the higher level dragons are also richer. In this wave of calls, at most half of the mature dragons can be eliminated, and maybe only a third. Next, the pregnancy problems of most mature dragons, the pregnancy problems of legendary dragons, the hatching problems of dragon eggs, and the awakening problems of young dragons. Take your time, research something, ask for a wave of funds, provide a service, and collect a fee. With the teacher's guidance, Gretel was shameless and generously let the public know. Male dragons in their prime, including male dragons under their prime, who need to have children, can bring their spouses to seek services. Within 3 days, his mage tower was overwhelmed by young and old dragons. Gretel had to build a small house outside the mage tower, lead out a transmission line, and let the specially arranged golems receive him there. Yes, it only serves older male dragons who have difficulty in reproducing, not older female dragons. Reason: there are many reasons why female dragons have difficulty in reproducing, and research is more difficult. The mage tower is still available for the time being. This research was not carried out. What should I do if the dragon couple is of the same age? Then I can only ask you to know better. It is not our fault that the results are not good, and the failure to successfully conceive or lay eggs is not our fault. Can't get pregnant the first time? If you can't get pregnant the first time, you can do it again for free. There is no additional charge within 3 times, beyond 3 times. If you can't get pregnant even 3 times, it means that your problem cannot be solved by current research. If you need service, please come here and queue up and get the magic contract. Please be sure to read all the notices clearly, then sign the contract and pay the deposit. First come, first served. First sign, first pay the deposit, first to enjoy the service. Legends will not be entertained. Legends will not be entertained. Female dragons over 300 years old will not be entertained. It only guarantees fertilization, not the survival of the fertilized egg, nor does it guarantee that the dragon egg will be pregnant until birth. Please pay attention to the magic contract and make sure you can accept it again. We will not accept requests for refunds or compensation due to later problems. That is to say, the demon controlled by the tower spirit has enough patience to repeat these requirements to each customer over and over again or even several times. Regardless of whether the customer is questioning or angry, attacking or noisy, hesitant or constantly changing his or her mind, the tower spirit and the golem all provide a perfect service attitude. Don't be impatient, don't get angry, don't jump on your feet, don't criticize people head on and all over, don't slam the table and turn it over and say, "Do it if you want," or "Get out," or "Is your head full of water?" Such a simple condition can't even understand. The smile on his face is always perfect. Of course, the smile of the devil is placed on the face the moment it is made. At most, the customer's inquiry takes more than half an hour, and he will point out, "Hello, your consultation time has expired. Please leave the room temporarily and give the opportunity to the next person." Then, the door clicked open, the walls of the room fell down, and the puppet moved left and right, along the track to the edge of the room, and bowed to the giant dragon lined up at the door. Please. These numerous restrictions have successfully discouraged more than half of the customers. In the end, only 11 older male dragons, with their spouses or other female dragons, came to line up at Greet's side. Then, they saw a miracle. No, so fast. Isn't this too fast? How many can you make in one day? Give him a month and he can finish all the dragons on Dragon Island, right? Assisted reproduction, or in other words, sperm selection and assisted sperm and egg combination work, has indeed formed a process. The sperm can work optimally for up to 1 hour, including half an hour waiting for liquefaction. Next, it doesn't take half an hour to send selected sperm, cast spells, and assist in the union of sperm and eggs. All in all, 1.5 hours. In other words, if each dragon couple casts the spell alone, 1.5 hours per couple, 8 hours a day, can make 5 pairs, 11 dragon couples, and it can be completed in 2 days. If it is an assembly line operation, it will be even more serious. Everyone lined up and went from link to link. In one day, 11 couples got it all done. Of course Gretel couldn't go directly to the assembly line. After all, he still paid a lot of money, and his work must be worthy of the money given by the customer. In other words, you need to give the other party a private hospital-level experience, and you cannot fool them with the service procedures of a public tertiary hospital. The pre-conversation, informing, and comforting, and the inspection before starting to cast the spell all required him to come to the scene in person and communicate with a smile. Read the notice aloud to confirm that both spouses are willing, informed, and agree. There is no way, until now, his disciples, or other high-level spellcasters in the same direction, do not have enough status to be recognized by the dragon clan. If you want to make money, Gretel has to show off his face. He actually wants to charge hospitalization fees. Since it takes about 7 days to determine whether the spell is successful, it is best for the female dragon who comes to seek medical treatment to be hospitalized near the Mage Tower. The problem is that the true form of the dragon clan is too large, so building a large number of wards for them requires a huge investment, and the gain outweighs the loss. It is not suitable to create a human-sized room, mainly during the fertilized egg division and implantation period. It is best not to change between the human form and the dragon form, which may affect the success rate of pregnancy. I had to let them find a place nearby. It doesn't matter whether it's the sky and the ground, whether it's drilling into a cave and soaking in sea water, it doesn't matter, the Mage Tower can't provide a ward. What a shame. Except for technical assistance fees, no money can be charged. Even so, the speed at which Gretel was making money was so fast that the dragons who came to seek treatment could not close their mouths. A pair takes half a day, a pair takes half a day. In just one day, you can earn the dragon clan's decades of savings. Decades. In 5.5 days, Greet dealt with all the dragon couples who came to seek medical treatment. When the last couple was finished, the first couple already had a vague feeling. I should be pregnant, I feel like there are 4 children, 4 little lives this time. The first brass dragon couple who came to seek medical treatment cuddled together, rubbing their long necks and whispering. Nearby, 2 pairs of metal dragon couples showed envious eyes. Getting pregnant so soon? Then, can we have another litter? Thanks to @RidingPigTiger for the 500 starting coin reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1657. Have you heard? That Nordmark mage successfully helped 9 dragon couples conceive children. 9 couples. Yes, I heard about it too. Out of 11 couples, 9 were successful, an incredible success rate. Strictly speaking, everything should have been successful. The elder said that he felt a faint breath of life. This breath of life did not grow into a dragon egg and gestate in the mother's belly. That is another issue. Princess Norrell smiled and walked in the wounded barracks, listening to the whispers of the dragons. There was an endless flow of people coming to recuperate, to visit the wounded, and to gossip. The most explosive gossip during this period is undoubtedly the achievements of Master Nordmark. Its extent even suppresses the number of cracks in the recent world barrier and the number of casualties. And he's very fast, a couple in half a day, a couple in half a day, all done in 5.5 days. Not to mention, most of the time is actually spent chatting, which means he can do it even faster some. Ah, little Gretel did a great job. Even the dragon clan would be surprised by such outstanding results and had to take it seriously. After all, they have been studying for so long and have not been able to reach this point. Of course, gossip is gossip after all, and the biggest characteristic of gossip is that it will lose its shape as it is passed down. Princess Norrell walked around the wounded barracks and treated the injuries of 5 dragons of different races. When she came back, the rumors became. Have you heard? That Nordmark mage successfully made 9 female dragons pregnant with children. 9? How did he do it? Are those female dragons willing? No, wait, little Princess Yuehui is just watching like this? Where are Andre and Cynthia? Didn't they beat him to death? Princess Norrell's smile stiffened. There must be a limit to spreading rumors. It depends on how you spread the word about little Gretel. What if Andre and Cynthia ended their slumber and heard the news and really came to beat him? Those are two legendary dragons. 2. She quickened her pace and walked toward the dragons in the next room who were gossiping and forgetful. She was sorting out her words in her mind, planning to argue with them. Before reaching the door, I heard another giant dragon correcting. You are wrong. The theory I heard is that he impregnated 9 pairs of dragon couples in their prime. 9 out of 11 pairs. What? He got the male dragon pregnant too. Princess Norrell's face was completely distorted. This is no longer something that can be explained clearly by simply arguing. There is a saying that rumors stop at the wise, and there is another saying that the more you describe, the darker it gets. You have to think carefully about what to say. Plunging headlong into the vortex of rumors will only muddy the water and create 17th or 8th versions of the rumors. It will not do any good to little Gretel's reputation. Princess Norrell wandered back to her residence, fluttering, and told the rumor to her husband as a joke that night. The Lord of Thunder couldn't help but tell his wife the jokes his disciple had made in the past, which were irrelevant but interesting. Why inoculate people with cowpox because they are suspected of causing horns to grow? Why do you try to deliver a woman with dystocia, only to have her husband come to your door and cause trouble? Why build a research institute in the Eagle Kingdom, but have trouble raising rats, rabbits, and monkeys? The research institute is buzzing with chaos every day. Princess Norrell leaned forward and backward, wiping away the tears she shed from laughter. After he finished laughing, he said seriously. Then, do we want to help clarify the rumors about little Greet? What clarification? These guys are all idle sure enough. The Lord of Thunder shook his head. The Dragon Clan is not like those stupid men and women in Nevis who don't know the truth and take whatever others say. Those dragons who spread rumors know it in their hearts. They are just idle, chatting and having fun. Let them go. Just wait. Rumors are also well known, and they spread much faster than serious news. By the time little Greet gets the first batch of results, all the dragons who should know about it will know about it, and they will be looking for additional investment. Additional? How much more does he want to add? The Dragon Clan has given him enough. It has already been given to a mage tower. The Lord of Thunder smiled and said nothing. The investment from the Dragon Clan is indeed enough, but when it comes to research, the investment is never too much. Not to mention, little Gretel is shouting every day that there are too few research materials, too little, and he can't do this or that. For example, why do 2 of the 11 dragon couples fail to conceive? Why does he simply not accept jobs from mature female dragons who are over 300 years old? Isn't this all due to insufficient research and uncertainty about some things? Well, in order for little Gretel to obtain resources smoothly, maybe he should also take a walk outside the world barrier and explode a few more times. The more explosions there are, the stronger the Dragon Clan sees the fighting power on his side, and the more willing they are to allocate investment. It was obvious that a large part of the investment in Greet was in his name as a teacher, and he conducted research under his guidance. For example, a larger accelerator or something. So what else do you need? The golden dragon Thorngraf huddled beside him, saying nothing, pretending that he did not exist. He is just a representative of the Dragon Clan, sitting here to deliver the message, not the elders who have the power to make decisions. Now that Elder Batista is here in person to negotiate with Gretel, he can just be his record keeper and there is no need to say another word. Well, first of all, I need a batch of dragon eggs and baby dragons with the results. Gretel was more confident and could speak more freely. Seeing Elder Batista's thick eyebrows raised and his eyes gleaming with coldness, he was not afraid and knocked on the table. The wall behind him lit up. The tower spirit cooperated tacitly, calling out one page after another of information and projecting it on the flat white wall. The research plan, the purpose of the research, and the necessity of dragon eggs and dragon hatchlings during the research process, were written clearly, line by line, and scrolled slowly on the wall. Gretel half turned around and pointed at the wall. "Don't worry, I won't do any harmful experiments with dragon eggs and baby dragons. I just classify the dragon eggs and record their weight changes, energy fluctuations, and the surrounding incubation environment. Young dragon, apart from taking samples, testing chromosomes, doing physical examinations, and recording whether you have successfully awakened, I will never do anything extra. If the dragon clan is worried, I can sign a magic contract or ask you to send people to monitor on site. If it hadn't been for Gretel, if any other magician had made such a request, he would have been killed the moment he opened his mouth, hung on a wooden stake, and poked on the edge of Dragon Island as a warning to future generations." However, when Gretel spoke, Elder Batista had to think carefully. He stared at the words on the wall, thinking quickly, and asked Greet, "Is there no other alternative? If I can use dragon eggs, I've tried my best to use dragon eggs. If I can use monster eggs, I've also used monster eggs," Greet replied sincerely. "There is really no other way to replace the research that needs to be done so far. By the way, the dragon eggs and dragon hatchlings do not need to be moved. Just give a time and place, and I will come to your door. I will ask the alchemist to come and install the detection device. The detection device must be tested by us. It cannot affect the hatching of dragon eggs. It cannot affect the safety of dragon eggs. Agree to this. I will contact you to see which compatriots are laying and hatching eggs recently." "Of course. Of course." Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. This is the simplest request. Only when the dragon clan agrees can the discussion continue. By the way, some of the different detection devices have to withstand high temperatures, some have to withstand low temperatures, and some have to be resistant to corrosion. In these cases, alchemists have to make targeted adjustments. It is foreseeable that the magicians of the change department have to work overtime again, working overtime to death. That's the first need. What about the second one? Second, I need the dragon clan to provide enough materials to build a larger accelerator dash. Gretel continued to speak loudly. Now we have tentatively concluded that the atoms in the chromosomes have enough energy, which is the essential reason why living things have stepped into the transcendent world. But this conclusion is too rough. In order to refine the operation, we need larger accelerators to energize atoms and further study the extraordinary nature. Elder Batista listened hard. After only listening to a few sentences, my mind was filled with atoms, electrons, particles, radiation, particle flow, and various mathematical models. I seem to know every word, but even if it is a legendary silver dragon, a legendary third-level silver dragon, after hearing the end, I feel like my mind is filled with a mess, and there is a buzzing. I understand. You need an accelerator. It turns out that one is too small and there is not enough research time, right? He reluctantly came to this conclusion. Greet smiled happily. Yes. So I need dash. You draft a document with the experimental plan and experimental requirements, and I will bring it to the Presbyterian Council for everyone to discuss. Elder Batista sighed. This piece of shit must not be allowed to be tortured alone. If you want to jump into the pit, let's jump together. So, what about the third requirement? The third requirement. Gretel's face turned serious. The third demand is the most difficult part, and it is also the most difficult part for him to ask so far. I need some eggs from higher order female dragons, mature, unfertilized eggs, to study the process of combining sperm and eggs, as well as the process of fertilized egg division, and which methods can definitely enhance them. Do you want to get the dragon eggs directly in the alchemy vessel without using the female dragon? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1658. In the alchemical vessel, the young dragon is raised using artificial insemination and in vitro culture. Having said that, this idea is really exciting. Imagine that in the underground layer of the Mage Tower, there are rows and columns of alchemy vessels quietly lined up, with liquids of gold, red, silver or various strange colors pouring into the vessels. The alchemy vessels, pipes, and even the entire room are engraved with mysterious and complicated magic runes. As the liquid is injected, they light up and disappear, and the colors keep changing. The liquid bubbles in the vessel, rotates around a fixed point, is sucked in, and is discharged from the vessel in the other direction. In the center of the vessel, a subtle dot is absorbing those carefully proportioned powerful energy liquids. Gradually growing up, from a fertilized egg, it grew into a dragon egg, and then the dragon egg hatched into a young dragon. By then, there will be rows and rows of dragon eggs in the Mage Tower, as well as batches of baby dragons. By then, the Parliament will no longer be short of dragons. Whether the mage wants to raise a dragon as a companion and pet, or wants to study dragon blood, dragon scales, and dragon bones, or wants to send a group of dragons over to spit fire on the glorious holy city. There are as many dragons as you want. Thinking about this scene makes me feel really good, sucking. But this will definitely not work. This is too much. All research can only be research, and it must not be about producing a batch of organisms and then squeezing them severely. Besides, with the current strong position of the Dragon Clan, they will never tolerate this situation. That's not it? That's definitely not it? Gretel shook his hands wildly. Before Elder Batista could ask, he had already finished speaking. I plan to study the factors that influence the combination of sperm and eggs of high-level dragons and the differentiation of fertilized eggs, and how to improve its success rate. There are many steps from a fertilized egg to a dragon egg. There are so many difficulties. Moreover, the dragon egg is such a big target, it is extremely easy for the dragon clan to supervise it, and it is absolutely impossible to steal or escape. Elder Batista looked at Greed steadily. Look at his eyes, look at his movements, look at the beads of sweat on his forehead. After looking at it for a while, he sighed and smiled slightly. This is you. We are willing to trust you and believe that you will not use the dragon eggs for other purposes. Master Nordmark, you must not let down the expectations of the dragon clan. That's for sure. Gretel breathed a huge sigh of relief. Elder Batista agreed to this request, which means that he will convince other dragon clans and go to the meeting of legendary dragons, especially high-level legendary dragons, to fight for it. This means that he will visit the dragons who are giving birth to children one by one, and try to persuade them to agree to observe and measure the dragon eggs. The most important thing is that it means that he will visit high-level female dragons one by one to persuade them to donate eggs. Well, this is the most difficult part. In human-assisted reproduction research, how to obtain donated eggs is also the most difficult part. When it comes to invasive operations on dragons, Greed simply cannot imagine how difficult it would be. Fortunately, a big boss came forward. Thanks man. Have a safe life, boss. It is not easy to achieve each of Greed's 3 requirements. Fortunately, if it is not a last resort, no dragon clan is willing to offend a 3rd-level legendary dragon, let alone a 3rd-level legendary healing system. It only took Elder Batista 10 days to complete Gretel's first request. To be precise, he contacted the first batch of dragon couples who were giving birth to children. The green dragon Janat and his wife, the female dragon is pregnant with the dragon egg and will lay eggs in a month. They agreed to let the magician install a measuring device to measure the size and weight of the dragon egg. I spent most of the month making the measuring device and the rest of the month on the road. Fortunately, we can also work on the airship, otherwise the construction period would really be delayed. When the 1-month deadline was about to arrive, Gretel walked out of the temporary teleportation array near the green dragon's lair, and walked into the dragon's lair with Archmage Bolo, who was in charge of the measuring device. "Can this thing hold up?" The green dragon Junot stared at Gretel with extreme suspicion, the dragon egg measuring device in his hand. "Our eggs need to be soaked in strong acid. If this thing is placed under the egg, will it break, and then the fragments will poke into the dragon egg?" Gretel calmly turned sideways and said nothing. Master Bolo took a half step forward, wiped his rough, calloused hands on his overalls, held up the measuring device, and showed it to the green dragon couple. "Don't worry. There is absolutely no problem. The shell of our measuring device is made of special high-strength ceramics and is attached with strengthening magic. It is not afraid of falling or being smashed, and it is definitely not afraid of corrosion." Ceramics. The green dragon Junot stretched out his hand and touched the smooth ceramic surface. Then, his nails stretched and stretched, his palm deformed, and the front half took on the shape of a dragon's claw. The fingers are bent and clasped, as if they are planning to flick. Is the ceramic strong enough? Our child cannot be very well behaved. In the later stages of incubation, he will roll around in the egg, the dragon egg will bump against each other, and he will even jump up and smash it. Gretel slowly opened his mouth. What exactly is a dragon egg? When a human being is in the mother's womb, it would be great if he could stretch his arms and kick his legs. But the dragon egg can actually float in the air and bump around. The dragon eggs they had observed before had never caused such trouble. The measuring device we made can withstand the impact of an iron block weighing 1 ton falling freely from a height of 2 meters. Repeated 1,000 times, the shell will not crack. Fortunately, Master Bolo gave the answer with rich experience. There is a cushioning device inside the ceramic shell. The shell itself is strengthened by various spells, and it also comes with a once-a-day repair spell. Don't worry, it is definitely strong enough. Strong enough does not mean durable enough. Next to Junot, the female green dragon, who was slightly smaller in stature and looked much heavier in her steps, questioned softly. The incubation period of dragon eggs is about 16 to 20 months. How long can your measuring device last? 2 years. 2 years is absolutely no problem, Master Bolo puffed up his chest confidently. This material is specially used for special environment measurements. It can withstand 10 years, not to mention 2 years. Don't worry, our safety performance is absolutely reliable. This kind of ceramic shell has been used in many Mage Tower research devices. Test. The green dragon couple studied the measuring device carefully for a while, stretched out their claws to flick it, pinched it, and even tried to pass one, sprayed a mouthful of acid, and slowly pressed down on it. Seeing the oval-shaped measuring device with a slightly concave surface sinking into the soil and breaking into pieces after a long time, the male dragon Junot finally showed a satisfied smile. It looks like this stuff is good. Well, since I promised you, come over here. Gretel quickly equipped himself with a full set of defenses. High temperature resistance, low temperature resistance, strong acid resistance, air filtration, resistance to volatile acids in the air. Of course, you also need to use a limited floating technique to reduce your weight. The green dragon's nest is in the deepest part of an old forest. As you walk in, the smell on both sides becomes more and more unpleasant, and there are more and more swamps. This is it. Walking to the deepest part of the dragon's lair, the female green dragon raised her chin and pointed to a green swamp. There were large and small piles of green algae floating on the top of the swamp, and the bubbles kept bursting, emitting an unpleasant smell. Greet took a few steps back reflexively. Archmage Bolo, however, remained calm as he threw out a few golems and added a bunch of resistance spells to them. The demons took the measuring device from his hand one by one, walked forward slowly, and jumped bravely into the swamp. Device number 1 is installed. Device number 2 is installed. Device number 8 has been installed. The information receiver is installed. On a specially hardened and dry ground next to the swamp, Archmage Bolo solemnly drove in a pillar. Adjust left and right on the column, then open the back cover of the column and take out a small magic crystal card from inside. The Archmage held the magic crystal card at his fingertips, spit out his magic power, and saw light and shadow dancing, and rows of numbers appeared in front of his eyes. The signal reception is normal and the storage is normal. He smiled in relief and nodded to Gretel. Greet also smiled and bowed to the green dragon couple. After the dragon eggs begin to hatch, I hope you two can allow us to collect information regularly. Well, I may not be able to come in person every time. Can you please give me a token so that the person I carry can prove his identity? Woolen cloth. The measuring device on Green Dragon's side was installed smoothly. However, this was just the beginning. The entire Mage Tower, or rather, the alchemy department in the Mage Tower, was driven into a frenzy by Gretel. The measuring device of the blue dragon egg has to withstand high and low temperatures repeatedly. High temperature for half a day, low temperature for half a day, high temperature for half a day, low temperature for half a day, repeated cycles. This has very high requirements on materials. The eggs of the bronze dragon need to be immersed in sea water, so salt resistance is very important. In addition, the water pressure also needs to be paid attention to, and be careful not to be bitten or taken away by sea fish and shrimps. The eggs of golden dragons and red dragons should be placed in an open flame or at high temperatures. In addition to paying attention to high temperature resistance, the measuring device must also pay attention to not being interfered by the radiation of the flame during signal transmission. For the eggs of silver dragons and white dragons, the measuring device must be able to withstand low temperatures. The alchemists were driven to death by him and almost felt like vomiting. As for Greet himself, after issuing the request, he devoted himself wholeheartedly to the next research. The silver dragon Alicia's child is about to hatch. She promised us to take samples. Great. Get ready. Set up the energy center. Set up the microscope. Set up the computing center. It's okay, this is the only thing left. We only have 1 hour. The baby dragon will complete the awakening process within 1 hour of birth, and we need to complete the chromosome sampling and testing before that. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1659. The eggshell is cracked. The hole is even bigger. You can already see the head. Stand away. Stand aside. The dragon egg shook. Shake. Shaking violently. The silver dragon's egg is not that big, only 2 feet long and 1 foot high. The mages who study it have to lie on the ground to keep it at the same height as the crack on the egg. However, the dragon egg shook with such momentum that it looked like there were thousands of troops inside. Greet lay on the ice next to the dragon egg, staring at the cracked egg in fascination, imagining that the baby dragon would curl up into a ball, rush over like a small cannonball, and hit the inner wall of the eggshell with its head. Back again, curl up again, hit again. If it weren't for the baby dragon's parents squatting nearby and keeping a close watch, he would jump on top of the dragon egg and throw a bee ultrasound spell or a similar detection spell to see what the baby dragon was doing inside the egg. Unfortunately it can't. Greet lay regretfully on the ice, staring at the dragon egg that had begun to hatch, watching the cracks getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. Cyrilla lay side by side with him, turning her head to look at each other, and touching the ice to make sure that there was a magic barrier between Greet and the ice, so that he would not be frozen. After a while, he turned his head again, stared at the dragon egg attentively, and whispered to encourage the young dragon. Push harder. Punch harder. Push again. Hey. Click, a piece broke off. Click, another piece breaks off. Gretel, when I was little, was this how I tried to break out of the egg? You don't know what happened when you were a child, how can I know? Greet replied in a low voice. Cyrilla shrugged. Of course I remember, but what I remember is the way I looked out of the egg. I remember the light in the dragon's nest, and the cold wind blowing in from outside the eggshell. Of course I can't see what I look like. SHH. Be quiet. It's coming out soon. Click, click, click. A big piece broke off. Boom. There was a crash, and more than a dozen pieces, large and small, broke off from the edge of the crack. A half-foot-sized hole was opened in the hard stone eggshell. After a moment of pause, the young dragon charged again. This time, with a bang, a big enough hole was finally opened in the eggshell. Among the broken eggshells on the ground, a blue-gray baby dragon slowly crawled out. His whole body was wet, and he was curled up on his eggshell pitifully. His head was big, his body was small, and his movements looked particularly clumsy. It can't even fly yet. Cyrilla exclaimed in surprise. The wings of this little dragon are very small compared to its body. They stick to the sides of its body and it seems that it is difficult to unfold them. Not to mention flying, the little guy curled up into a ball, with the tip of its tail wrapped around its body, and shivered on the eggshell. For a while, he didn't show any sign of standing up. Next to her, the silver dragon Alicia looked at her child with a smile. After hearing this, she glanced at Cyrilla with an annoyed look and replied matter-of-factly. Of course you can't fly. You can't fly even when you are born. It will take an hour for the mucus on your body to dry up and your wings to open before you can fly and fight. How could I be so ugly when I was born? I have a big head and a small body, and I'm just a ball of dust. Cyrilla turned her head in disgust. Alicia smiled coldly, stretched out a finger, and pressed her forehead hard until she turned her head away. You damn girl has forgotten her roots. She staggered behind us and forgot when she called Sister Alicia. When she was little, she had a big head, a small body, and very small wings. The color of the scales also becomes brighter as you get older. When you are just born, they are blue-gray, but they become bright silver in adolescence. Cyrilla stuck out her tongue at her, made faces, and puffed. Greed had no time to pay attention to the bickering among the silver dragons. He stared at the young dragon with all his energy. A mage's hand had already been condensed in his hand, and the front end transformed into a small spoon, ready to reach out at any time. Ang, ang, ang. The young dragon screamed loudly. Greed seized the moment and quickly put the mage's hand into the young dragon's mouth, wiping and scraping. Very good, the sampling was successful. Hurry up and do the test. Cyrilla, weigh. Measure. Hurry up. Gretel rushed to the nearby laboratory. There was a clicking behind, and the young dragon pounced on its own eggshell, munching on it. Eggshells are the baby dragon's first meal. By eating all of their own eggshells, the baby dragon can absorb enough energy and nutrients. At the same time, it adjusted slightly, the mucus on its body dried up, the dragon wings spread out, and its arms and legs became flexible and strong. Then, it began to meet Longsheng's first challenge. Accept the legacy. Awaken your true name. What factors are related to the young dragon's successful awakening of his true name? Its weight? What level was it born at? Its energy? Or, its physical strength? Mental strength? For many years, the dragon clan has been divided into two factions on the issue of the awakening of young dragons. One group believes that the success or failure of awakening is a matter of natural selection and natural elimination. As noble dragons, they only accept the strongest as their compatriots. The other group believes that just like a giant dragon will feed its young dragons, take care of and protect its young dragons, teach its young members of the same race, and provide all kinds of help to the newly born young dragons so that they can successfully awaken, this is what adult dragons should do. However, regardless of the giant dragons of the natural selection sect, the dragons of the artificial intervention sect have been studying the dragons for so many years, but they have not found a rule. What kind of young dragon is needed to 100% awaken the true name? Some of the hatchlings in the same litter looked thin, small, and stunted, but they managed to awaken. Some looked strong, weighing 1.5 times as much as their brothers and sisters in the litter, but they failed to do so. Survive the awakening. Some young dragons, both parents are of the same race, and they are not mutated when they are born. They hatch well and awaken well, the probability of awakening is less than half. There are also some young dragons whose parents are not of the same race and mutate into mutant dragons at birth. There are 5 eggs in a clutch, 3 failed to hatch, 1 failed to awaken, and the remaining 1 is stunningly talented. In short, there is no pattern, as if it was just a random joke by the dragon god, or a random throw of the dice when the baby dragon hatched. Now, greed has also come to challenge this rule. He left a set of equipment for Cyrilla to pick up the baby dragon, measure its body length, weigh it, measure its energy index, and measure its muscle content. Measuring the grip strength, chewing power, flapping power of the dragon's wings, and stroking power of the dragon's claws, the most important thing is that a row of small electrode patches are placed around the head of the young dragon, constantly measuring its brainwave and mental strength values. 87. 88. -95. 103. It's still rising, 115, 117. Gretel, would you like to take another sample and test it again? I feel like it's getting stronger. Greet threw himself wholeheartedly on the instrument. The roots of the oak stick poked out and penetrated deeply into the energy center brought here specially. The crown of the tree spread out, and the crystal clear fruits buzzed and rotated. Another branch is connected to the calculation center, which continuously inputs part of the calculated content into the mobile tower spirit, which is processed and analyzed by the tower spirit. Chromosome scan completed. Chromosome recording completed. During chromosome analysis, the analysis completion rate is 20%, 25%, 37%, 42%. Before the analysis was even halfway through, Sirara's shout was heard. Greed rushed back, quickly resampling, remaking the samples, and resending them to the microscope. On the screen of the computing center, another progress bar instantly appeared, and the growth rate of the original progress bar began to slow down. The second batch of chromosome scans are in progress. Chromosome, the number of extraordinary points, 107, the number of extraordinary points, chromosome 1, point 21, point 59, point 68. Chromosome 2, point 7, point 15. Ah, what a hassle. Gretel stretched out his hand to cover his face, pressed his thumb between his eyebrows, rubbed it, and then rubbed it again. In terms of the number of extraordinary points, the number of extraordinary points of young dragon is very close to that of silver dragon, both are just over 100. As for the extraordinary point number, we need to wait until the scan is completed and brought back to the tower for comparison. However, there is no definite evidence now. Moreover, it would be best to have 10, 20, hundreds of baby dragons. Only by comparing those who have successfully awakened with those who have not, can we draw conclusions. It's just possible. The number of dragons is too small, and the samples are too small, so the conclusions drawn may not be reliable, or in other words, most likely unreliable. My real name, Nicholas Kyruit Luciano Bergen. Just as he was thinking this, the baby dragon's childish yet majestic shouts came from the hall next door. Thank God, this young dragon successfully awakened its true name. After successfully accepting its parents and even its elders, giving it strength and memory, it became a wise dragon capable of casting spells, instead of a confused dragon beast. The mental power index is 157. The moment before awakening, the mental power index is 157, Cyrilla shouted. Gretel quickly entered the relevant readings into the computing center and walked back quickly. 10 minutes after he was born, and 45 minutes after he was born, the number of extraordinary points did not change. It means that there was no essential leap in his path to extraordinariness. Next. Next dragon egg, next dragon hatchling. Greet and Cyrilla stayed in the nest of the silver dragon Alicia for 10 days and witnessed the hatching of 5 dragon eggs. Among them, 4 hatched successfully and 1 failed. Among the 4 baby dragons, 2 successfully awakened and 2 became dragon beasts. In the end, Gretel hugged a large pile of information, said goodbye and returned to the mage tower, frowning. Among the young dragons that successfully awakened, one had a mental power of 157 and the other had a mental power of 143, among those that failed to awaken, one had a mental power of 148 and the other had a mental power of 139. So, what is the decisive factor in whether the awakening is successful or not? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1660. Energy level. When hatchlings break out of their shells, they all look like level 3. When they are close to their infancy, they will grow to about level 5. If they don't grow that strong, they won't be able to break out of their shells, and they will fail to hatch. Gretel frowned, holding a lot of information and writing and drawing. In 1 month, he visited 3 dragon nests and welcomed the birth of 3 nests of baby dragons. For this, I also want to thank him for the connections he accumulated from running around and working hard, no, dragon veins. Except for Alicia's brood, which was brokered by Elder Batista, the other 2 broods of young dragons have more or less some relationship with him. Of the 2 broods of baby dragons, one was born to the daughter of the emerald dragon Tana, and the other brood was to the steel dragon Gould, who had been blown apart in an indescribable part. With his help, he and the female dragon Ketika born to Lottie. When the baby was conceived, other people helped, and they asked to watch the baby dragon break out of its shell and give the baby a physical examination. Naturally, the dragon's parents couldn't help but refuse. From this, Gretel obtained 3 nests of dragon eggs, a total of 12 eggs, 8 baby dragons, and the data of 4 baby dragons who successfully awakened their true names. But it is far from enough. Alicia laid 5 eggs, 4 of which hatched successfully. 2 dragon hatchlings awakened their true names. The dragon eggs that failed to hatch successfully, the weight of the hatchlings was significantly lower than the average weight. It was obvious that they were not well developed. Steel dragon Gould's wife, Katai Kalyati, laid 4 eggs, 2 of which were successfully hatched, 1 of which successfully awakened its true name. Gretel analyzed the data with some depression. One of the dragon eggs that failed to hatch was too low in weight, and the other one was a little deformed. It is speculated that 2 giant dragons of different races gave birth to a heterologous dragon, but the mutation did not succeed. Children of the emerald dragon, 2 of the 3 eggs were hatched successfully, and 1 of the hatchlings successfully awakened its true name. The weight of the 3 hatchlings, based on comparison with historical records, exceeds that of the emerald dragon hatchling by 15%. After writing this, Gretel's eyes finally lit up. He put down the pen, clenched his fist and waved it hard. It's true that he worked so hard to study it and finally saw some results. It is speculated that unfertilized oocytes are fused with fertilized eggs using electric fusion to add intraoval substances to the fertilized eggs. The effect is remarkable. However, the hatching success rate has not been significantly improved, and the probability of awakening the true name has not been significantly improved. Gretel sighed in annoyance and continued writing. However, the reason why the young dragons failed to awaken their true names is currently unknown. The only thing that can be confirmed at present is that all young dragons with a mental power index below 120 failed to awaken. Considering that the essence of the awakening of the dragon's true name is that the brain accepts the inherited memory of the dragon clan in a short period of time, the dragon's mental power index is too low and may not be able to withstand the impact of memory. However, we don't yet know the factors that affect the spiritual growth of dragons. The tentative research direction. Greet began to bite the end of the pen, and kept chewing the end of the pen. There are so many directions that need to be researched, and he can't figure them out at the moment. Maybe he needs to hold a meeting to brainstorm ideas. That is to say, the endless ink pen was a magic item customized by him as a prize. It was strong enough and durable enough to prevent him from biting it into strands or even destroying the magic structure inside. After biting for a long time, saliva flowed down the quill seal to his hand, and almost flowed onto the paper. Greet finally sighed and threw a cleaning technique on it. Forget it, let's have a meeting. What factors affect the growth of mental power? The first must be the brain. The necromancer of Black Crow Swamp couldn't wait to answer. Before Greet could ask further questions, he had already revealed a bunch of research data. According to our research, the thickness of the cerebral cortex and the number of folds of spellcasters have obvious advantages over warriors. The average thickness is 5% greater than that of warriors, and the higher the level of spellcasters, the thicker the cerebral cortex is. Gretel simply didn't dare ask where their data came from. Well, considering that the necromancer collects and dissects a large number of corpses, and is the executioner of the parliament, they can probably get enough fresh corpses to dissect. Black Crow Swamp's black robes were flying and his saliva was splashing everywhere. On the left, right, and directly opposite, the magicians who were close to him all quietly moved away to avoid being accidentally injured by stray bullets. By the way, we should also pay attention to the blood flow in the brain and the cardiovascular system. Only with enough blood supply can the brain function. We can observe the blood vessels of the young dragons and dragon beasts. If there are any problems, we can advance them intervention. This is a good idea, provided you have enough experience, for example, catch enough dragon beasts and do cranial Doppler on them. Greet nodded while listening. After the necromancer finished speaking, a magician of the control system diagonally across the street coughed lightly and calmly continued. The activity level of brain waves also needs to be paid attention to. Since the inheritance of dragons is a spiritual activity, we can measure their brain waves and observe where the critical point is. This makes sense. Greet brushed up the records and asked questions while writing. Then, what should we do if we reach the critical point and the young dragon can't hold on? There are some spells that may be able to intervene. The magician of the control department answered without hesitation. For example, sedation, soothing, or spells that temporarily increase mental power, such as Fox's cunning. Also, if the brain is hypoxic, maybe you can give the young dragon oxygen. Gretel thought for a moment, and saw a young dragon receiving inheritance, with all kinds of magic auras hanging on his body, and an oxygen mask on his face. It also has to be a specially made oxygen mask for humans, which is not suitable for the face shape of the young dragon and will leak. Or, there are oxygen tubes in the nostrils and a straw in the mouth, sucking high energy and powerful magic solution. By the way, there are a bunch of patches stuck on the forehead to display the fluctuations of brain waves in real time. There are several probes stuck on the back of the head to monitor the blood flow of the brain. Would this kind of formation be too big for a young dragon? Will it cause too much interference to the young dragon, but increase the possibility of failed awakening? This is a direction you can try. He nodded to the magician who spoke. You can apply for a group of dragon beast hatchlings to conduct basic research. After accumulating enough data, if you think there is a possibility of success, I will apply to the dragon clan for intervention on the hatchlings. He gave the answer smoothly, and when he mentioned applying to the Dragon Clan, he suddenly paused. By the way, is there any previous research on the forced input of information into the brain, which causes fluctuations in mental power and changes in blood flow and blood pressure in the brain? Is there any model that can be used as a reference? Have. Several hands were raised at the same time. Gretel looked around and coughed. No rush, come one by one. Don't worry, everyone has a chance to speak. Come on, start from my left-hand side and turn clockwise dash. The first one on the left hand is the plastic energy department. Archmage Philby leaned back and said nothing. The evocation system has always been about bombarding and relying on force to break the situation. She is really not good at such delicate and mind-manipulating spells. Next it was the turn of the illusion department. The team leader raised his hand confidently. 5th level illusion spells, dream telling spells, 6th level spells, and dream casting spells can all input information into the brain. We have ready-made data on changes in mental power, and changes in blood flow and blood pressure in the brain. We can open a consultation with the medical branch. Subject. Very good. Greet smiled and nodded. Immediately afterwards, the magician of the control department couldn't wait to answer. The 9-ring spell, memory weaving, can destroy, change, or instill pre-woven memories into the target creature. We have very rich research on the relationship between this spell, mental power, and resistance, and we have sufficient information. So can enhancing resistance resist this spell? Of course, we don't need to help the young dragon resist it, but can we do it by slowing down the time it takes to take effect and the rhythm of information transmission? Gretel asked eagerly. The magician of the control department looked a little stiff, as if he was about to crack open, but he still managed to nod his head. Our previous research was not in this direction, but we can give it a try. I think we can write to MS Almeida and get some guidance. Well, it actually shocked a legend. Before Greet could say how can this be so embarrassing, diagonally across from him, the black-robed necromancer spoke impatiently. As for spell resistance, we can try to use dragonborn monsters, or giants, dwarfs, lizardmen, and other dragon races to conduct experiments, to quickly transfer spell knowledge into their brains, while recording changes in brain waves and blood flow. Gretel slowly opened his mouth. Without any deliberate sketching, he just made up a vivid picture in his mind. A large number of monsters and humanoid creatures were tied to the rack one after another, their heads shaved, or simply just scales and no hair. There are a bunch of tubes connected to the forehead of each creature, and various numbers and lines on the light screen next to it are constantly flashing and jumping. The magician chanted magic in front of them one by one, or tore open scrolls, or put special jade slips between their eyebrows. Hello. It's a conspiracy? Gretel shook his head hard. We try to use non-invasive and non-harmful research methods. In addition, helping the young dragons through the inheritance period is one direction, and essentially strengthening the young dragons is another research direction. We can use cloning for research. The necromancer rushed to speak again. Clone the baby dragons, enhance one or several of their extraordinary points in a targeted manner, and observe their mental power index. As long as we clone enough, we will definitely find the answer. No, the cloning technique only creates the body, not the spirit. There is no possibility of awakening such a young dragon. Do we really want to create a lot of mindless whelps? How do you feel? I ran in the direction of the mad scientist and never looked back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1661. Mage Nordmark is recruiting testers. He's recruiting testers. A 3rd level to 4th level spellcaster. A 3rd level to 4th level spellcaster. Use memory weaving to forcefully inject the spell model. The subjects need to cooperate with the test. They are under the care of healers. The risk is very high, and you are responsible for your own life and death. The Turnbaka flapped its wings and cut through the sky. Flying from one settlement to another, from one dragon clan territory to another dragon clan territory. The half-legendary Tern can fly all over the territory of an adult dragon in one day. In 10 days, it can fly around tens of thousands of square kilometers and notify all the intelligent tribes in the 10 or 8 territories. Can we recruit experimenters this way? Greet asked in a low voice, very skeptical. You are conceited about life and death. The risk is very high. One bad move will lead to death. And there's no pay. In other words, the only reward is the possibility of learning a new spell. Don't worry, we can definitely recruit you. Golden Dragon Thorngraf gave him a look that said, you simply don't know the sufferings of the world. Do you know what they will do for a chance to become a dragon warrior? A tribe will ignite all the warriors and go into the mountains to fight and hunt the strongest monsters for a chance to advance. Let us fancy. If several tribes only have one chance, they will even attack each other and kill each other's strongest warriors in one wave to ensure that this opportunity falls to their own tribe. Barbarians will marry their most beautiful girls to cloud giants, and dwarfs will offer their most precious treasures to lizardmen. Isn't it forbidden to attack each other? Gretel blurted out. Jinlong shrugged. Yes, these guys are our property. In theory, they are not allowed to attack each other, in theory. But you know, there are always times when one cannot see clearly. Greet shut up silently. He turned his head and looked at the vast, barren land outside the mage tower, and let out a long sigh. Well. The lives of the creatures on this land are too hard. Dragon Island is located in the northernmost part of the New World. It is cold and barren, and it snows for 5 or 6 months a year. Only the toughest plants and trees can grow. They rush to sprout, grow leaves, and bloom in the summer, working hard to absorb nutrients and store them for the long winter. The yellow squirrel has to dig deep burrows to store a little bit of food. Reindeer have to dig through thick snow to eat grass buds and moss beneath the snow. Wolves and bears have to travel 10 kilometers or dozens of kilometers to find enough food to feed themselves and raise their cubs. And humans, or in other words, intelligent creatures, naturally cannot live well in such a world. They ran, they hunted, they dug up the newly thawed soil and carefully planted food. On 1 acre of land, 10 kilograms of wheat are planted, hoping to harvest 100 kilograms next year. This is a harvest that the Kingdom of Kent completely looks down upon and will be laughed at loudly by skilled farmers. They need to fight against the sky, against the earth, against wild boars and reindeer, against sparrows and grouse. Being able to become a dragon warrior, or even being able to advance to the 1st level, means stronger combat power and richer hunts. It means that if you go hunting today, you don't need to avoid the wild boar when you see it, but you can find a way to kill it and carry it back. It means that the little cub at home can get a bite of meat. This means that in addition to paying tribute to the noble dragon clan, the owner of the territory, there is no need to pay tribute to other surrounding tribes. You can even receive tributes from other tribes. As for death. What is death? In such a barren and difficult land, who can expect to live to a very old age and die in bed? That is a treatment that only the strongest spellcasters, those who are favored by the dragon clan, can have. What does it matter if you pay the price of your life in order to advance? Do you think this kind of opportunity comes very often? The golden dragon Thorngraf continued to squint at Gretel. We select Dragonvein warriors, except for the time when Vaska made a bet with that person. We only select them once every 10 years, or even decades. When young dragons establish territories, they will be more relaxed, and then there will be no such good thing. Greet curled her lips, and curled her lips again. Dragon-veined warriors are not produced without limit. Even the bloodline given to you by the dragon clan requires the consumption of strength. If you consume too much, it will slow down the speed of your advancement. Is it easy to use memory weaving to infuse the spell model? That's a 9-ring spell. 9 rings. That is to say, there are 9 level spellcasters in the research team who happen to be able to use this spell, so they can cast 3, 5, 10, 8, 20, or 30 in one go without paying extra costs. Why don't you try teaching spells directly to the caster instead? What does a 9-ring spell cost? A 3rd-level spellcaster must rely on 9-level spells to learn 2nd-level magic. Even the king's biological son or the eldest son of a Grand Duke cannot afford this price. On the first day after Turnbaka's flight, there were barbarian shamans, ogre magicians, and dwarf mages all around, packing up and heading on the road. After flying for 10 days, he soon started flying in the 2nd circle. Guide the way for those who may not be very literate, cannot read maps, or can only understand the simplest stream of consciousness maps. Take them to the wizard's tower. Or, take the magician to the spellcasters who are on their way, cast a teleportation spell, and pull them over directly. It's up to them to catch up on their own, and don't miss a few more if they arrive at the right time. A high-level turn like him is surrounded by a large group of his own kind, or ravens, peregrine falcons, bar-headed geese, and black geese, to inform him. With him here, it is absolutely impossible for those spellcasters on their way to lose them. Thank you, Baka. Thank you for your hard work. Gretel reached out and touched the tern's feathers, and gave it a small fish, a 3rd-level monster caught from the sea as a reward from the silver dragon's relatives. Baka raised his head and swallowed the frozen fish. He combed his feathers proudly and began to report. 10 subjects will arrive today. One of them is from the territory. It is only half a day's land away from the mage tower. My subordinates have already gone to lead him. There are 9 more who are farther away, and there are already mages there. Received. Great job, Baka. Greed handed out another small fish. Thankfully you are here. Only because you found so many subjects can our experiment continue. The Turnbaka held its head high and jumped up and down on the railing, its feathers shining a colorful black in the sun. After a long while, he flapped his wings and soared into the sky. Leave it to me. I will continue to help you find people. Don't worry, with me, Turnbaka, you will never be short of experimental subjects. For Gretel, the more subjects, the better. However, for magicians who work diligently, the more experimental subjects, the better. Mage Nordmark, can we extend the time for people to come here? Ms. Katharina, who is of the enchanting and controlling type, was the first to complain. Although there are many people from the magic control system, there are only 3 magicians above level 17 and above, and she is the only one who knows memory weaving. In other words, all experimental tasks were placed on her alone. Release 9-ring magic 10 times a day. 10 times. This Nordmark mage, what is 9-ring magic? Can I be released casually by eating and drinking? Well, if they feel very tired, I will tell them to slow down a bit. Greed looked at her pale face and the beads of sweat on her forehead, and felt embarrassed. How many do you think is more appropriate to do in a day? 8. 5. Or 3? Ms. Katharina was embarrassed. Performing 9-ring magic 10 times a day is really a bone-crushing experience for her, squeezing her spirit and body to the limit. She needs to rest for 3 days after doing it. 8 times a day, supplemented by enough medicine, food, meditation, and rest, is exactly the amount that is relatively stressful and can promote one's own progress. 5 times a day is relatively easy, but 3 times a day is just fishing. 8 times, but I need some auxiliary medicine and high-end food, and a special meditation room. Send one person away, and the next one will come again to complain. Archmage Bolu of the Alchemy Guild, 1 foot higher and 1 foot lower, with his hair covered in material powder debris, rushed to Gretel. Mage Nordmark, can we divide the subjects a little bit? You see, the barbarians are so tall, the dwarfs are so short, the cloud giants have heads bigger than pumpkins, and the lizard men have pointed heads. So you need it? We can't even make the adapted device. Archmage Bolo's eyes were blank and his hands were trembling. To make a dragon egg measuring device, to make a measuring device for an intelligent race, each subject must make a different one. We are already working 16 hours a day. Well, a magician must ensure 8 hours of sleep every day to have enough spells the next day. Working 16 hours a day means stuffing a sandwich into your mouth while still working on your hands. Greet really wanted to ask them how to solve the problem of eating and drinking, and how to solve the problem of Lazarus. However, seeing the bloodshot eyes of Master Bolo, he could only sigh. Or, you can make the line connecting the probe longer? In that case, no matter whether you have a big head or a small head, you only need to stick the probe upward. Master Bolo staggered away. Before Greet could sigh, he was faced with the next question. Mage Nordmark, the necromancer who works in the Mage Tower, is always in a state of excitement. However, the person in front of Greet looked particularly excited, with his black robe flying, and almost gurgling black air. In this experiment, if a subject dies, what will happen to the body? I mean, can their body be returned to Black Crow Swamp? We can buy it. We can give a batch of compensation to the subject tribe. Gretel couldn't hold his breath. Thanks to @book friend 2023061800391730 for the 500 starting coin reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1662. Roll. Gretel was so happy to spray him in front of his face. Indeed, Black Crow Swamp is short of corpses, high-quality corpses, and high-quality caster corpses, all the time. Indeed, the magic of memory weaving, under high-intensity input, may indeed cause brain damage, cerebral hemorrhage, and endanger life. Especially when they conduct this test, they are originally intended to test the strength limit of the brain. Indeed, these intelligent tribes, these small tribes in the Dragon Clan's territory, may only have a population of 100 or 200 people. There may be 30 or 40 warriors, or young and middle-aged men are all warriors. Spellcasters, I'm sorry, it would be nice to have one. The loss of a spellcaster is huge. If Black Crow Swamp is willing to pay some compensation, it can at least get some blood back. However, this is not the reason why Black Crow Marsh ran up to him while the experiment was still being prepared and squatted there waiting for the corpse. The purpose of conducting experiments in the Mage Tower is to succeed every time, or at least for every experimenter to go safely. You're not going to convince them to bring out a few more corpses, are you? This sentence swirled on Gretel's tongue, then swirled again, and finally he swallowed it. Alas, I have doubts in my heart. It would be too hurtful to ask in person. However, after he swallowed his words, his suspicious eyes were not completely suppressed. The necromancer who came to negotiate was experienced and knew what he was thinking at a glance. He quickly raised his hand and swore. Don't worry, we won't interfere with the experiment. We can sign a magic contract. We can apply for tower spirit supervision and witness. We will never intentionally kill people, or try to push other magicians to kill people. Gretel smiled a little sheepishly. The necromancer who came to apply breathed a sigh of relief, bowed his head and saluted. Then it's settled. I'm going to draw up the magic contract. Once it's drafted, I'll come back to you for review. Thankfully, the Nordmark mage agreed. Although the corpse of a spellcaster is very important, the corpse of a foreign spellcaster is even more important. No matter what, it can't compare to the trust and attention of the Plague Lord. Only when the Plague Lord is settled can they have a steady stream of research projects and resources, and only then can everyone advance. The necromancer's work was going very smoothly. For those small tribes in the dragon territory, a corpse, even the corpse of a spellcaster, is of little use. Being buried in peace is just a thought. The body can be sold to Black Crow Swamp in exchange for a piece of magic equipment, or a batch of potions or something. Of course I am willing. Sir, if I can't survive, I will sell my body to you. By the way, there is no need to transport the body back after it is used up. It's quite troublesome for them to organize funerals, so they won't let the children. We are tired. Sir, could you please change to one more piece of magic equipment? You see, in addition to attacking, I also know some healing skills. If the children have minor illnesses or pains, I can still cure them. Gretel held his chin in his hand and listened silently to the negotiation process from the tower spirit without saying a word. Alas, in this world, struggling to survive is really hard. It's so hard that even if you become a spellcaster, you have to find ways to sell your body for a good price. By the way, will this mentality of you can still have a guarantee even if you die make them unwilling to persevere and feel that the benefits of death are more than that of living? Greet tapped her fingertips on the table, and then tapped again. After knocking for more than 10 times, he finally made up his mind and coughed lightly. Tower Spirit, retrieve the information of these spellcasters. Age, level, spells mastered, how many times a day they can be used, the more detailed the better. Retrieve Black Crow Swamp and the corpse purchase agreement they reached. Bring up the experimental plan of the charm control system and let me see which spells are injected into them. Talling works extremely fast. There was a buzzing sound, and the magic crystal board lit up. One by one, information, agreements, and plans appeared on the crystal board as a directory. After a pause, the catalog turns into a table, and the table turns into a projection, falling on the large white wall of the study. Gamey Bone Breaker, Ogre Spellcaster, 38 years old, 3rd level. Masters spells, Bloodthirsty, 3 times a day, Whipping, twice a day. A small amount of herbal healing ability. Corpse Purchase Agreement, a staff, 3 scorching rays per week. Inject Magic, know the language. Pinot Gear, Dwarf Spellcaster, 57 years old, level 4. Masters spells, Slinging, 3 times a day, Oil on the solace of the feet, twice a day, Activated Rope, 3 times a day. Corpse Purchase Agreement, an identification spell talisman, which can trigger the identification spell once a week. Inject Magic, know the language. Grosso Gust, Cloud Giant Spellcaster, level 3. Gretel held his chin in one hand and scratched back and forth on the table with the other hand unconsciously. If a 3rd level spellcaster were to trade for a Scorching Ray staff, would I be willing to trade it for him? If I were the chief or leader of this tribe, would I be willing to change? Or, if I were this spellcaster, would I rather die in exchange for one more spell equipment for the tribe? After all, spellcasters do not always exist, but magic staffs always exist. Spellcasters will be injured, sick, old, and die. The magic staff, as long as it does not break down, will always be preserved in this tribe and can be used forever. If I were old, if my disciple, or my son, had embarked on the path of a spellcaster, he could support the situation for the tribe. Greet looked at it for a long time and felt that it looked unreliable. After thinking for a while, he knocked on the table again. On the large solid wood table, a scale appeared out of thin air. It's crude, rough, shaky, and even the scales don't look very accurate. It's just a gadget that magic trick made at random. You can only simulate it, but you can't expect it to work. Fortunately, Greet didn't expect it to be weighed seriously. He tapped it again with his fingertips, and a word appeared on the 2 pallets of the scale at the same time, life on the left and death on the right. On the tray on the left, small red squares are placed one after another, 3 bloodthirsty spells, 2 whipping spells, 1 herbal treatment, 1 proficient in language, 1 may live another 20 years, 1 live. On the tray on the right, there are small black squares, the scorching rays are fired 3 times a week, it can be used for 100 years, it's so tiring and painful to receive the transmission, I can't stand it anymore. The balance wobbles left and right, but no result can be obtained. Gretel shook his head and twitched his fingers. The language understanding block flashed a few times and turned into wild power. Well, that looks a lot better. Gretel touched his conscience and felt that if it were him, he would try his best to hold on and survive. And when you can't hold on any longer, you will think, I'm so tired. I can support the tribe by selling the corpses, so give up. But, know the language, know the language, know the language. Greet flipped through 10 plans from beginning to end, and all the injection spells he found were language comprehensive. He knocked on the table again and raised his voice. Tailing, help me pick up Ms. Katharina. Hello. Ms. Katharina, are you free? Can I come over and ask for advice? It was impossible for Gretel to come in person to ask for advice. As soon as he finished speaking, Ms. Katharina finished a spellcasting task at hand and immediately went upstairs in person. Gretel didn't talk around in circles, asked her to sit down, gave her tea, and then asked for advice. Why are all the spells injected into language comprehensive? This spell is useless. It cannot enhance lethality, cannot provide treatment, or even provide assistance. Yes, it can effectively improve the learning efficiency of spellcasters and increase the upper limit of this tribe, but for these barbaric tribes on Dragon Island, it is almost useless. It takes dozens or hundreds of spellcasters to find a spellcaster who can step on this pedal and move to a higher position after mastering language proficiency. It's like this. When we explore outside, we have one principle for researching each tribe: try not to disrupt the balance of the tribe. Ms. Katharina is extremely experienced in this area and answered with a smile. When one tribe is strengthened, it will want to annex other tribes. If 3 or 5 tribes are strengthened, there will be great turmoil in this area. Although, they are always in turmoil, but it is best it's not up to us, is it? This was a direction Gretel had not expected. Magicians are not in the mood to teach the people of a place and help them get rid of poverty and become rich. They are even rarely in the mood to conquer them. Look at it from a distance and try not to interfere. This is the greatest restraint and compassion of the mages. Also, the language understanding spell makes it easy to add things to it. Ms. Katharina paused and couldn't help laughing. In order to test the limits of these spellcasters, more information can be stuffed into this spell. Dictionary. Gretel blurted out. Ms. Katharina burst out laughing. Speaking of this, Gretel had nothing to say about the choice of spells. Ms. Katharina looked at the scale on his table, pondered for a moment, and said slowly. Your concerns are reasonable. How about, in the name of the Mage Tower, give them some compensation and make an agreement that they will only get it back alive? It would be great. The next day, 8 spellcasters from different tribes, tall and short, old and young, stood in a row. The short one is not even up to Greet's chest, and the tall one is 2 people taller than Greet. The old one has a snow-white beard and bald hair, while the young one is high-spirited. They lined up from left to right, looking up or down, staring at Greet's face. In this cast, we will try our best to test the limits of your endurance. Your brains may explode, you may be paralyzed, you may die. Gretel put his hands behind his back and said slowly. Everyone who survives without incident will receive a healing leaf as a gift, which can cure moderate injuries 3 times. Please try your best to hold on and survive. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1663. A magical instrument is precious. A healing magic tool, even if it can only be used 3 times, is still very precious. To a certain extent, it can be replaced with 3 lives of equal value, or even the 3 lives of the core figure of the tribe, the spellcaster, and the strongest warrior. At critical times, 3 life extensions means that the entire tribe can survive 3 major crises and have 3 more chances to survive. Or, catching a good opportunity can give the tribe a little more confidence when they work hard, and maybe they can reach a higher level. The spellcasters of the tribe are usually the wise men, leaders, teachers, and inheritors of the tribe. There are no fools among them. Gretel clearly saw, from left to right, 8 people, 9 pairs of eyes all lit up. The 4 eyes of the 2-headed ogre magician are as bright as light bulbs. Gretel smiled slightly. He slowed down, looked at the subjects one by one, and repeated slowly and clearly. The healing leaf is only available if you are alive. If you die, there is none. Everyone, please work hard. The casters walked into the laboratory with heavy steps. The magicians began to work around them, measuring heartbeat, blood pressure, respiration, blood oxygen saturation, and cranial blood flow velocity. Ah, it hurts. Why do you need to prick your finger? Quiet. Don't make trouble. Blood sugar needs to be tested too. During the process of learning magic and releasing magic, blood sugar is consumed very quickly, so be sure to monitor it. Greet turned around. The magic control mage who spoke smiled at him and said in a soft voice. This is also what we detected. Master Nordmark, thank you for the detection method and your hot cocoa. With it available to replenish it at any time, our spellcasting will be much smoother. What can Greet say? Greet can't say anything. When the brain is working hard, glycogen is indeed consumed very quickly, and sugar needs to be replenished. But if you hold hot cocoa and drink water like this, you won't even think about whether you will gain weight. Be careful about diabetes and pancreatitis. Of course, using memory weaving to carve magical knowledge into it is also a very mentally consuming process. If you can be prepared, you must be prepared. Pinot Gear. It's time for you. Lie on your left side, curl up, and curl up again. Curl up tighter, relax, and don't fall asleep. Pain blockade. The brainwave electrode needle is inserted. The electrode needle is fixed. Spinal puncture begins. Cerebrospinal fluid pressure measurement. Pressure 82 mmHg, normal. Blood pressure 132, 85, blood oxygen 99, respiration 20. Prepare to cast a spell. 3, 2, 1. A group of magicians gathered nervously around the treatment bed and watched. The high-level mages of the magic control system, the conjuration system, and the necromancy system occupied the best observation positions. The mid-level mages were behind the teacher, brushing up, recording, and performing various tasks in accordance with the teacher's requirements. Kind of operation. In the spiritual connection, all kinds of information, discussions, and orders came and went. Blood pressure 135, 90, 138, 92, 142, 96. Blood oxygen 93. Breathing 28. Get on the oxygen tube. Blood oxygen 95, 96, 95 again. 97. Very good, back to normal. Breathing 25, very good, indicating that oxygen inhalation is indeed beneficial and can help the subject support more long time. The blood pressure is over 160. How much progress is there in casting? Judging by the time, there's still half of it. Give me a soothing spell. The blood pressure has dropped. 155, 102, significantly reduced. 149, 97. The soothing technique is effective. Gretel stood far away in the corner, overlooking the mess through the mystical eye screen, quietly listening to the shouts in the psychic connection, and for a moment he suspected that he had returned to the emergency room again. At the very least, these heart rates, these brain waves, and these blood pressures are a little bit similar to those in the previous life, but it's a bit too much to rush around and throw soothing techniques when the high pressure is 160, why should it be 180? Of course, if the patient doesn't know it when his blood pressure reaches 200, and is still jumping around, screaming and roaring, then the doctor will have to order him to lie down and quickly give him antihypertensive drugs. The blood pressure is up again. The brain waves are starting to go haywire. Don't panic. Are the brain waves messed up because of too much pain, or because of the influence of memory weaving, or because the brain can't bear the large amount of memory input? No. I don't know. The cerebrospinal fluid pressure has increased significantly. 110, 115, 120. Don't panic. The pressure is still within the normal range, continue to monitor. Immobilize the subject. Don't let him move. The cerebrospinal fluid pressure continues to rise. 135, 149. Is his brain going to explode? Try another soothing spell. Not very effective. Heartbeat 158. 165. Attention, treatment team. Beware of heart rhythm disorders at any time, pay attention to rescue dash. Gretel shook his head again. A heartbeat of 165 beats/minute is nothing, especially for a short race like Dwarfs with a relatively fast basic heart rate. If it were him, no matter what, he would have to wait until his heartbeat exceeded 180 before he started to monitor her closely. The fortune-telling technique, who is in charge of the fortune-telling technique? Is there any problem? Not yet, the life aura is still normal, and the monitored subject is not on the verge of death dash. What about blood flow? How about cranial blood flow? Cerebral blood flow velocity is increasing, continuously increasing. There is a sudden decrease. Watch out for cerebral hemorrhage. Treatment first or CT first? A CT scan is very fast. Hurry up and get one. No. The energy gathered by the 9-ring spell is too strong. The interference is too great, and the cerebral blood vessels cannot be seen. Where's the cerebrospinal fluid pressure? The chicken is flying and the dog is jumping, the chicken is flying and the dog is jumping. In any case, after a lot of experiments, the Mage Tower finally accumulated certain data. Ms. Katharina held a thick stack of information and reported energetically at the group meeting. According to our research, external intervention can effectively improve the success rate of memory infusion. We divided the subjects into 5 groups: oxygen inhalation group, comfort group, treatment group, all-round intervention group, and control group. When the spell injection output is the same, the success rate of the oxygen inhalation group is 35%, the soothing group is 45%, and the treatment group is 25%. In the comprehensive intervention group, the success rate increased to 75%. And only 25% of the control group. Gretel hissed as if he had a toothache. The control group only has 25%, which means that of the 20 subjects, only 5 survived this test, and the remaining 15 either died or suffered from cerebral hemorrhage and paralysis. Even in the group with the highest success rate, all methods were used, but 5 casters died. But in any case, the experimental data points out the direction to intervene in the awakening of the young dragon. Greed held this information and went to write an application form to the dragon clan. If another baby dragon is about to break out of its shell, please be sure to notify us. We may have found a way to increase the success rate of awakening. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1664. Increase the success rate of the young dragon's awakening. Elder Batista frowned and flipped through the report submitted by Gretel page by page. One thing is that if Gretel's method is successful, he would like to extend it to the entire dragon family and use it on every hatched dragon. What? Wouldn't the hatchling's parents do that? There's no need to take exams first to be a parent these days. That's not to say, these old guys should work harder and visit one by one. Even the youngest and laziest young dragons are guaranteed to be able to release three-ring magic. It is not difficult to press their heads and let them learn a few small magics. From pregnancy, to childbirth, to the hatching of dragon eggs, it only takes a year. Can you learn a few little magic tricks in a year? How lazy is that? Not to mention, being able to awaken 4 children at a time is twice as productive as awakening only 2 children at a time. Whether it is a male dragon or a female dragon, they can spend half of their energy on giving birth and half of their time on raising children. As long as he is a long-brained dragon, he will know what to choose, right? The premise is this method feasible? What are you looking at? A figure flashed behind him, and soon, a breeze swept over the report in his hand. Amethyst Dragon Cerberus raised his head slightly with his hands behind his back. A thick stack of reports was spread out in front of him, occupying an entire wall from top to bottom, from left to right. Soothing and healing techniques, as well as oxygen inhalation, can help the young dragon advance? So simple. Oxygen inhalation aside, I remember that we also used soothing and healing techniques, but they had no effect. You will know after reading his detailed explanation. Elder Batista did not want to argue. I am getting old, instead of wasting my words, let the other party see for themselves. 1 page of simple explanation, 5 or 6 pages of detailed explanation and analysis, dozens of pages of more detailed introduction and analysis of spells, hundreds of pages of experimental records. He was crazy to tell it from beginning to end. Fortunately, Amethyst Dragon Cerberus didn't expect him to talk either. Amethyst dragons, probably the vast majority of gem dragons, love magic and are good at magic. After getting a spell book, they can forget about food and sleep, read it for several days, even dozens of days, and then slowly reflect on it in their long life. As for the application materials submitted by Master Nordmark, although they are not necessarily complicated, they are thick enough. For Amethyst Dragon, this thick stack of several hundred pages of material was enough for him to spend 2 or 3 pleasant nights. As expected, Amethyst Dragon Cerberus plunged into it. Fresh magic, fresh treatment ideas, and fresh analysis methods made him feel the long-lost pleasure. Healing and comforting spells are not uncommon spells. Even if an adult dragon doesn't naturally know these 2 magics, it can be done just by learning them. However, the idea of monitoring the subject's heartbeat, breathing, blood pressure, blood oxygen, and various other indicators, and then deciding the timing of casting a spell based on the indicators, is very rare. Research results show that during the process of instilling information with memory weaving, the brain of the indoctrinated subject is under tremendous pressure. In order to relieve this pressure, the human body will increase blood pressure, accelerate heart rate and breathing, and provide nutrients for brain cells. When blood pressure rises to a certain level, tiny blood vessels in the brain can burst, causing brain damage. We dissected the brains of all subjects who failed to pass on and died, and found varying degrees of cerebral hemorrhage and brain cell death. For this reason, it is recommended to provide oxygen support from the beginning of the inheritance. At the same time, when the blood pressure and brain waves show that the young dragon is about to reach the critical point, provide comfort support and use treatment to prevent cerebral hemorrhage. Amethyst Dragon breathed a sigh of relief. This application? Illustrate. Paper. The explanation is clear and the reasoning is fluent. Among spellcasters, it is considered a first-rate article. He turned over a page, intending to read in detail how to judge when reaching the critical point, and then he quickly frowned. I can understand the heart rate, but what the hell is an electrocardiogram? Why are there so many complex waveforms? Are each waveform different? What the hell are brain waves? From these dense lines, how can we judge from the lines that the young dragon is almost reaching the critical point? Throw the spell quickly. What the hell is the method of selecting patch locations based on the skull shapes of different dragon species? Amethyst Dragon Cerberus read a lot of content about brain waves from beginning to end. Apart from his own brain buzzing, he only understood one thing. The situation of the dragon clan is very complicated. It requires a large number of young dragons, or at least a large number of young dragon beasts, as research subjects to understand the situation of each dragon clan in a targeted manner. If the treatment is released too early, it may use up cell energy in a meaningless manner and affect the brain's acceptance of inheritance. If it is released too late, it will be too late to seal the damaged blood vessels. For this reason, we must seize the opportunity. Well, this reasoning is very clear and understandable. But what the hell is ultrasound? How to judge the blood flow status of the brain from ultrasound and grasp the timing of release treatment. He turned a page, and another, and another. After turning over 7 or 8 pages, there are all kinds of images, black and white, color, motionless, and constantly fluctuating. No matter how you look at it, you can't get the point. After reading about 10 pages, I finally found a sentence between the words. See ultrasound diagnosis for details. It's not enough for me just to look at this thing, right? You have to get a certain book called Ultrasound Diagnosis and learn it in detail. Then practice it for a year and a half to make sure you can use it, right? Amethyst Dragon patiently continued to scroll down. After 50 or 60 pages of detailed introduction and analysis, there is a thick stack of experimental records. Experimental design method, why choose to use the spell memory weaving, and how to determine the amount of input data. How to select subjects, how to exclude experimental subjects, and how to group them. What are the results of each person's experiment, the changes in heart rate, blood pressure, blood oxygen, and brain waves, what kind of intervention was done at the first few minutes, and what were the results? Every subject has one. Every. Numerical records, tables, charts. An extremely detailed record, so detailed that it could only be true. And all the experimental records were sorted, analyzed, compared, and a bunch of big charts were made. The most eye-catching thing is the sharp comparison picture in the first few pages of the application document. The experimental group, the group that used all the help methods, had a success rate of 75%, the control group, the group that used no help methods, had a success rate of only 25%. 3 times the difference. Amethyst Dragon Cerberus sighed slowly. He packed up all the papers, applications, explanation documents, forms, and records, raised his head, and glanced towards the zenith. The bright sunshine shines directly down from the top of Dragon City in the sky, illuminating the entire Dragon City and coating the edge of the flower-shaped conference hall with a layer of golden light. From a sunlight perspective, it's already noon. Remember he started watching it in the afternoon? Before you know it, you have been watching it for a whole day? Or, 2 days. How's it going, old man? Elder Batista came over from nowhere. With a move of his hand, the large pile of records flew up and fell into his hand. Amethyst Dragon shook his head vigorously, and between his eyebrows, the deep purple crystal shone brightly. It seems a bit interesting. At least, in order to study this thing, I have spent more than 109 ring spells and went out. 9 rings. Even if it's a dragon, you can't just hit it casually with your eyes closed. Just those mature dragons in Sky Dragon City go out to fight and patrol, throwing 3 or 5 of them a day, and when they come back, they are all owing and agging, saying that they are almost exhausted today. Not to mention adult dragons, most of the level and power of adult dragons cannot be cast by a 9-ring spell. It's probably not possible to deceive us with more than 100 9-ring spells, the price is too high, this research should be credible, right? Let's find a chance and let them try it. The 2 legendary 3rd-level elders reached an agreement, and the matter was basically settled. Then, it's just a matter of running errands, and continuing to run errands to find suitable dragon parents and convince them to allow the young dragons to receive intervention. What? Let that Nordmark mage cast a spell for the young dragon to increase the success rate of awakening. There happened to be a nest of eggs being hatched recently, and Jacob, the white dragon, who was about to hatch in a month, almost had an afterimage in his head. Are you kidding me? Their white dragons are among the dragon clan, to be precise, they are the most numerous and most fertile among the 5-color dragons. No shortage of children, no shortage. The child who cannot awaken is not strong enough. Children who are not strong enough are not qualified to survive. They white dragons have been ridiculed as the shame of the dragon clan, and young white dragons are worse than chickens. Then let those young dragons who are not strong enough and whose inheritance will fail, barely get through and give birth to a bunch of weak children to seize resources, why bother? They are white dragons. It's not like gold dragons or silver dragons will raise children until they are teenagers, and they won't run away until the children rebel. It's not like those gem dragons. Their numbers are small to begin with, and every child is extremely precious. I wish I could feed each one. The amethyst dragon Cerberus failed to persuade him twice and had no choice but to retreat. There is no way, parents make the decision on how to raise their children, and other dragon clans have no right to intervene, even those who are not from the same clan have no right to intervene. You must intervene, unless there is a fight and the egg is taken away. Amethyst dragon Cerberus felt that it was not to this level. He left sadly, touched Elder Batista, and shook his head at each other. Generally speaking, the 5-colored dragons are the masters of survival of the fittest. Children are kicked out of the house in adolescence to fend for themselves. There are many lives and many deaths. Weak children have no value to them and will never be carefully raised. There are too few metal dragons. The gem dragon is also. Well. The 2 elders let out a long sigh and a short sigh. After sighing, we continued talking family by family. Finally, good news came from a Yunlong. Let me observe the hatching of dragon eggs. If possible, help the young dragon in its awakening process. Yes, Elder Batista sighed softly. He looked at Gretel softly and expectantly. The relationship between Yunlong and our silver dragon is not particularly good, mainly because we live in similar places, so we often compete for resources. However, Yunlong Sigmund has lost his children twice in a row, and he is willing to give it a try. Greed followed Elder Batista into the air in silence. After a long flight, he landed on a magic-gathered cloud island that was somewhat similar to Sky Dragon City. Stepping hard on the ground, it turned out to be hard solid ground under the clouds and mist. Rubbing it again, the ground felt similar to the top of a rocky mountain. Wanting to continue researching, Elder Batista paused slightly and urged. Hurry up! There must be a small piece of solid land in the middle of Yunlong Island where Yunlong lives. Why are you surprised here? Gretel. He looked up at the giant dragon at least 1 kilometer ahead, and silently changed the word a small piece in his heart to a small piece of the dragon clan. He threw himself a cat's elegance, followed Elder Batista, 1 step deep, 1 step shallow, and walked towards the center of Cloud Island. Walking to the center, there was only a deep orange dragon lying there peacefully, staring at a thick cloud in front of it. Gretel? Isn't it, a single father? Or a single mother? It's very tiring to be a single parent raising a child. He found a place for himself on the edge of the clouds, sat down quietly, and waited quietly. 1 hour, 2 hours, half a day, 1 day. Click. Click, click, click. The dragon egg began to shake and break. Greet jumped up, staring unblinkingly at the cracking eggshell, wishing he could just throw a few spells into it and monitor the baby dragon's vital signs immediately. But no, he waited patiently for half an hour, and then with a particularly loud click sound, the baby dragon was gloriously born. The little guy's scales are all silver and white, and he looks more like a silver dragon than a silver dragon. There is only a little red on the edge of the scales, which looks like a certain type of goldfish. Greet raced against time to weigh it and measure its length. As soon as he set up the magic circle and started measuring its mental power index, the little guy started chewing the eggshell. The gnawing was so focused and joyful that even Gretel pulled its wings and claws and measured its strength, but he couldn't make it raise its head. Psychic power 135. It's a bit low and may not reach the awakening line. Greet compared the data accumulated before and muttered silently. On the other side, Yunlong Sigmund had already turned his head. This child is too young. Well, he may not be able to wake up. That's when I come into play. Vital signs monitoring magic, get ready. Brainwave monitoring magic, get ready. Cranial blood flow monitoring, get ready. High energy food, get ready. Oxygen bottles and oxygen breathing devices are ready. Hey, hey, hey. Little guy, this oxygen bottle is not for chewing. Neither is this oxygen tube. Let go. Thanks to @bookfriend 202212270829344602 for the reward of 600 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1665. Gretel risked his arm being chewed into a carrot and struggled to grab the oxygen bottle. I went to grab the oxygen tube again, but my action was too slow, and I failed unfortunately. The young dragon held the oxygen tube in his mouth, clicking, clicking, clicking. While chewing, he arched his back, stared at him fiercely, and made a vague and threatening cry. Ang 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 ang. It chewed the oxygen tube in 3 mouthfuls, and then pounced on the oxygen bottle. Yunlong Sigmund, with his sharp eyesight and quick hands, threw out a live snake and instantly attracted its attention. The little guy pounced on the snake fiercely, biting off the snake's spine with a snap. Take it in your mouth, flick it, and go down half of it. The snake head was still trying to meander forward or escape, and the young dragon turned in its direction, took another bite, and the other half disappeared. Then, the little guy took 2 steps back and retreated into the eggshell fragments. While ferociously eating, coughing, and drying the eggshells, he stared at the oxygen bottle. Look at that posture, he will rush up and take another bite at any time. Didn't you give him something to eat? Greet took half a step back and asked Elder Batista in a low voice. The elder spread his hands helplessly. That's how a young dragon is. He never feels like there's not enough food. If you eat all the eggshells, he'll eat it. If you give him a sheep. If you give him a giant centipede, he'll eat it. As long as it doesn't burst his belly, he'll eat as much as he wants. Well, maybe if you eat a little fuller and have more energy in your body, you will be more likely to successfully receive the inheritance. Gretel touched his space bag and turned to look at the elder. The elder shook his head gently. No, generally speaking, before the baby dragons awaken, their parents will not feed them. All they can eat are their own eggshells. After they awaken, they will have their first live food. Don't break the rules. This. Greet began to think rapidly about the consequences of feeding. We focused on calculating the baby dragon's digestion speed, blood sugar rise speed, drowsiness caused by reduced blood supply to the brain after digestion begins, and drowsiness caused by high blood sugar after meals. Well, there is no information or data, so it is difficult to judge. But if you feel sleepy, your brain speed will decrease, your thinking speed will slow down, and your probability of successfully accepting the inheritance will also decrease. So dragons generally don't feed their children much before they awaken. All in all, don't do anything redundant. Greed silently retracted his hand, added a few extra layers of protection to the oxygen bottle to ensure that the young dragon couldn't bite it, and replaced it with a new seed. Produced by Elf Forest, it must be a high-quality product. The gift given by the legendary magic vine, even if it is activated in a hurry, will still have a physical strength of level 5 or 6, ensuring that the young dragon cannot bite it. Little one, come on. Vital sign monitoring, in place. Transcranial Doppler, unfold. Brainwave detection, connection completed. The invisible magic probe attached itself to the young dragon as the spells were released one by one. The young dragon raised his head in confusion and sniffed, then sniffed again, opened his mouth and bit twice, but didn't bite anything. The light screen had already unfolded around Greed. Greed stared closely at the beating numbers and lines. With a move of his finger, 2 vines snaked out. One end is slightly open, tightly connected to the oxygen bottle, and the other is ready to go. After eating more than half of the eggshell, the young dragon's wandering speed began to slow down, and its blood oxygen saturation began to drop. The other end of the vine, like a hunting cobra, reached out at lightning speed. It circled around the dragon's horns and fixed itself. Then, it snakes down close to the skin of the dragon's head and directly inserts into the nasal cavity of the young dragon. Ang ang. Ang dash. The cry of the young dragon is earth-shattering. It screamed, jumped, snorted hard, and struggled to pull off the 2 vines, but the vines were too tightly attached and tied too tightly, and it could not be pulled off at all. Not only could it not be pulled off, but due to strenuous exercise and too much tossing, the blood oxygen saturation was still dropping. Gretel glanced at the screen in his busy schedule, and saw the numbers on the screen changing from green to yellow, and from yellow to red. 95. 93. 91. 90. 88. It's terrible, little guy, you are trying to die. I know it's uncomfortable to inhale oxygen. Even if water vapor passes through the oxygen during delivery and the humidity is increased, many patients will still feel uncomfortable. Whether using an oxygen tube or an oxygen mask to inhale oxygen, some patients will toss and turn and express how uncomfortable they are. A little better, those who pull the oxygen tube pull the oxygen tube, those who pull the mask pull the mask, and those who ask to go home ask to go home. But you can't do this now. If you refuse to take oxygen, your blood oxygen saturation will be too low, your brain won't be able to hold on, and you may not be able to wake up. Just like those patients who are lying in bed and need to take oxygen, but they are struggling to be discharged. The doctor won't let you leave, won't let you pull the tube, won't let you get out of bed. That's for your own good. Forget it, don't think about this anymore. Gretel struggled to turn his thoughts around and began to think hard. How to solve the situation at hand. I have done more than 100 experiments before, and I have never encountered anything like this. Yes, the previous subjects were all fixed on the treatment bed, with a bunch of various tubes and probes on their bodies, and a needle behind their backs, still measuring the cerebrospinal fluid pressure. Maybe it's not that they don't want to escape, but that they can't escape even if they want to. But now this young dragon has no restraints on his body and is jumping around happily. Then tie it up. Let it not struggle. No, if you tie them up, the baby dragon's stress will be even more serious. Gretel thought and glanced quickly to the side. Elder Batista stood with his hands behind his back, his face expressionless, obviously not intending to intervene at all. The young dragon's father, Sigmund the Cloud Dragon, simply turned his head and looked into the distance. It seems that Sigmund doesn't have much hope for this young dragon, which is not strong at all and may not be able to survive its awakening. It is still jumping around randomly and has no intention of coming up with any ideas. I have to come. I'll figure it out myself. Alas, if it were a previous life, restraints would generally be used on patients who kept struggling and wanted to rip off the tubes, especially young children or patients who were delirious. However, for the young dragon, the restraint belt cannot be used, so we have to find another way. Gretel flicked his fingers continuously, applying local anesthesia. Local anesthesia. Local anesthesia. Paralyze the nostrils of the young dragon, paralyze the inside of the nasal cavity of the young dragon, so that it cannot feel pain or the strange feeling of the vines rubbing against the nasal cavity. By the way, it's best to numb the discomfort of oxygen hitting the nasal cavity. After several small-scale local anesthetics were thrown out, the young dragon raised his head in confusion, sniffed, and finally calmed down. It turned half a circle, returned to its remaining eggshell, and ate it up. Well, it's finally up. Greed watched with satisfaction as the blood oxygen saturation line went up, and the numbers changed from red to yellow, and from yellow to green. 90, 92, 93, 95, 96. Very good, back to the safe zone. Come on, kids, eat more, take in more nutrients, and last longer while accepting the inheritance. Maybe, if you work hard, you can get through it. You can wake up. The young dragon ate the eggshells with big mouthfuls, burped, and slowly lay on the ground. After lying down for a moment, it stood up straight again, turning back and forth in confusion. From time to time, it looked up at Elder Silver Dragon and Sigmund, the Cloud Dragon, as if it had remembered something. The Elder Silver Dragon took a step back, restrained his aura, and reduced his presence in the eyes of the young dragon, and then reduced it again. However, Yunlong Sigmund waited for a while, turned his head, and stared at his child. The sharp gaze firmly covered the young dragon. From those orange vertical pupils the size of an ice plate, Gretel even saw an undisguised murderous intention. Can't wake up? If you can't awaken, you have no right to live. Gretel shuddered. On the ground, the young dragon also shivered and curled up subconsciously. The next moment, the three major indicators of heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure rose rapidly at the same time. The blood oxygen saturation plummeted, the blood flow in the brain accelerated rapidly, and the brain waves also showed many chaotic lines. The speed of accepting inheritance is accelerating. This young dragon is struggling to awaken, trying to sort out the memories that are pouring down like a torrent. Hold on. My child, you have to hold on. Gretel stared at the light screen, not daring to blink. The brain activity of the young dragon is accelerating, and the mental power index is rising rapidly. From the initial 135, it quickly broke through to 141, and after a pause, it broke through to 145. Work harder. If it can rise to more than 150, the probability of successful inheritance will be much higher. Greed thought as he adjusted the flow rate of the oxygen bottle so that the little guy could receive more oxygen. Immediately, he raised his hand and threw down a soothing spell. The magic light fell bit by bit, seeping from the head of the young dragon and nourishing its whole body. The effect was immediate. The young dragon's blood pressure quickly dropped, his heart rate and breathing began to slow down, and his blood oxygen index began to rise. Very good, don't rush, take your time, we have enough time. Give your brain some time to adapt to so many memories, so much information. Even if it is a hard disk, the burning process is too fast and it can only withstand 3600 rpm. If you force it to rotate to 4800 rpm, it will burn out. Not to mention the human body, the body of a dragon, is much more subtle and complex than a hard drive. My blood pressure has risen again, almost to 200. Another soothing technique. Press down, extend the burning time. The results of previous experiments, memory weaving input the same information, the slower the input speed, the higher the success rate. Obviously, the torrent of memories that the dragon clan has to accept after awakening has put a lot of pressure on the young dragon. Gretel threw 5 soothing spells in a row, and still could only watch the young dragon's blood pressure fluctuate upward, and then fluctuate upward again. Just as he squinted his eyes and prepared a healing technique to save the burst blood vessels at any time, a mist of water suddenly appeared on the young dragon's body. The mist became thicker and thicker, until it enveloped the young dragon's entire body. At first glance, the outline of the young dragon was a little blurry, as if the entire dragon had disappeared into the clouds. After a pause, the young dragon's childish and solemn words came from the fluctuating clouds and mist. "My name is..." "Ah! Success! It really worked. Master Nordmark, can you please watch over my other children until they are all awakened?"